Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I'm honored to have Fredrick Cannon with me. Fredrick is the founder of Ascension Sports, and one of the things I think you're going to hear about his journey is if you're willing to start where no one else is willing to start, you'll have the opportunity that others could only dream of. So, Fredrick, thanks so much for being on today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You bet. So to start your journey, grew up in a small farming community and you end up falling in love with baseball. So talk a little bit about, growing up in the farming community, one, what you learned about work ethic and just, that side of things, but then two, having that first love of baseball.
Yeah, I grew up in Ruffin, North Carolina, which is for people that's not familiar, it's on the border of North Carolina and Virginia.
Yeah.
But very small community. My family had a little over 200 acres of tobacco uh, farmland, and we just grew up in it. So work ethic, you got that very early. It's about 4 or 5 years old. You had some type of role on the farm all the way up until about August or September. But one of the things we used to do when it was downtime is my grandmother used to actually make us like homemade baseballs. And we would actually use the tobacco sticks that you would use to string the tobacco on as bats. And that's really where it started from. But my older brother, he played as well. And where we grew up at, there was no gyms. So either you played baseball or you played football. So I fell in love with baseball at a very early age. Loved the Mets, Darryl Strawberry, Dwight Gooden. Those are my guys. And it just kind of grew from there. Was naturally pretty good at it. Like I picked up on baseball pretty quick. So that I mean, I just fell in love with it. The Ken Griffey's, the Frank Thomas's, Ricky Henderson, like all those guys just through that different eras. Like there was always somebody to gravitate towards, and played it all the way through high school and enjoyed every bit of it.
I love it. Now, along the way, you also started to develop enjoyment for basketball and really watching basketball. Not a shock being where you are that you have amazing basketball that happens to just be on local TV. But talk a little bit about what it was about basketball that kind of intrigued you and drew you in.
Yeah, I don't know really what it was, but I think it was just the access. Back then we didn't have cable, so we had whatever Raycom Sports showed at the time, which was predominantly all ACC basketball, which at the time was when Maryland and those teams were still in the ACC.
Yeah.
It was just my dad and brother was so diehard, like Carolina and Duke fans. It was just kind of you got drawn into it because they were so into it. And for me, growing up, Wake Forest was my team. Randolph Childress is my favorite basketball player all time. Like he was my guy, but it
Yeah.
was just being able to follow it. I think just being able to see the players and watch them at that time, guys they weren't going pro early. So you got to see those guys for 4 years and you really became a fan of those guys. And for us being in such a small town, we could go to an NC State game or Wake Forest game or a Carolina game. Like it was accessible. So you really became a fan. But as we started watching those, we would catch Big East games on Sundays on the News 2 affiliate, and you start learning about these other guys. It's not like now where you got the internet and you know a whole player's history from middle school to NBA. You would see somebody you never heard of before and be like, man, that guy's great. So you just fall into this rabbit hole of trying to figure out who this guy was. And I remember my mom got me a Street and Smith's subscription, and I would just
Yeah.
be certain McDonald's All Americans were obviously collected basketball cards and all this stuff. So it was just cool being able to track these guys manually for us following stats and all that good stuff. So even when the tournament time came, I remember, while we was in school, our teachers, that was part of the day. We would watch basketball at
Yep.
schools. So it was definitely a big deal for ACC tournament, NCAA tournament. Just growing up here in North Carolina, which we call the hoop state, it wasn't gonna be too hard to fall in love with basketball.
No, that's good. Now, as high school is wrapping up, you end up deciding to go to UNC Charlotte for your first 2 years.
Yes.
And talk a little about, being at UNC Charlotte, and also while you're there, I think freshman year you start doing some basketball coaching. So talk about getting involved with the coaching side of things.
Yeah, so I went to UNC Charlotte. At the time, UNC Charlotte was really good. Conference USA was really good. I think Kenyon Martin, Quentin Richardson, those guys were all in conference. Larry Hughes.
Yeah.
We had Rodney White, who was a lottery pick by the Detroit Pistons. But that was my first time. I mean, you going from a community that probably had maybe 20,000 people, maybe, to Charlotte.
Yeah.
So that was an adjustment in itself, but it was just a chance to kind of be immersed into, a lot of different cultures, all that good stuff down in Charlotte. Like that time was tremendous. While we were there, we had to choose some type of volunteer project. And I started coaching the YMCA team. And from that point on, like I just got hooked. Like you said, I stayed in Charlotte 2 years, and then I was blessed to get a internship with VF Corp, which his headquarters was in Greensboro. So it was only supposed to be a summer internship, and it ended up expanding to longer than that. So I had a choice to make: either stay at Charlotte and turn down the internship, or transfer to UNC Greensboro and stick with it. And I transferred to UNC Greensboro, ended up finishing out, and then receiving my master's from UNC Greensboro. But during that time, started coaching my first AAU team. Keith Gatlin and Delaney Rudd had just come back home from overseas and was starting a new program and gave me my shot. And I think I was 21, 20, somewhere in that ballpark, coaching like a 12U team. And so from that point on, I haven't stopped. So this will be year 24 currently doing
Amazing.
senior sports.
So how did you get connected with Keith and Delaney to get on their radar to be a coach?
They had a brand new facility that opened in Greensboro, North Carolina, called the Greensboro Sportsplex at the time. It was the first multi-court like sports complex I was familiar with. But when it opened, there was another prominent AAU group called the North Carolina Gators going on at the time, and they kept the elite of the elite. One of the teams had Raymond Felton, Carmelo Anthony, like all these dudes on one team, but it really didn't leave any space for developmental players, that type of kid. So when Delaney and Keith started the Greensboro Panthers, um, they needed coaches, and it was kind of like an open call type deal because I didn't know Keith or Delaney personally. Those guys were like legends to me. So some of the guys I already had relationships with, they were going to coach, so they brought me in to help them coach, and that's how that all started.
Amazing. So as you start coaching on the AAU circuit, and I mean, obviously that has been uh, a radically changing, basketball league, right? I mean, it started with, I would say, few teams that were kind of the elite of the elite, and now, I mean, depending on where you go, you can find teams that, I mean, these kids aren't even playing in their high schools, but it's changed over time. But you fell in love with developing the players and helping them grow and see how good they could become. So talk a little bit about, working with 12-year-olds and working on your patients. And mind you, everyone, as you're listening, not only has Fredrick taken classes, working, coaching, but he got married as well. So talk a little about, that balancing of life, of all of these different things going on and prioritizing each of them.
Nah, I definitely always shout my wife out because I'm one of those type of people, like once something really catches my attention, like I really dive into it. So when I got the coaching job, uh, it was humbling too. Once we got the coaching job, we got these 2 year olds, we practice, we think we're good, and we go out and score like 6 points our first game. So we get our butts kicked.
The story of
So
every coach ever, right? Like, man, when we're running fives against, we're great.
and so it's kind of like, man, we need to do more. And that's when I started realizing the emphasis and the importance of the skill development and really breaking the game down to its simplest form to make sure, not assuming that every kid understands. And I had a very good mentor named Chris Walton. Chris was here, played at once. I think he played at Winston-Salem State. I know he went to Winston-Salem State. And that was back when Stephen A. Smith and all those guys were there. Harry Giles' dad was there with them. He ended up going to relocating to California and coached high school ball there. But he was a tremendous mentor to me. But for me, that ego side of things, of we're gonna go out and beat these teams, and then you get humbled like that. He was able to help me kind of grasp that. Okay, this is what we did bad. This is how we implement this into practice the next 2 to 3 weeks, get better. So Chris did a tremendous job. My wife was tremendous in the fact that I went from being at home, every day of the week to, hey, we're gonna practice with these kids four
Yeah.
nights a week, and I'm already, like I said, doing schoolwork, working. So like she's always been super supportive of what I had going on, but she knew also for me, like once somebody tells, not just kids, but anybody tells me their dreams and I can assist, like I've always wanted to see you do well. And when I started getting involved with these kids and they telling me they want to go play in college and they want to do these things, at the moment I wasn't equipped to be able to help them with that. I could coach them
Yep.
as best as I could, but I wasn't who I am now to where I could pick up the phone and call somebody on their behalf. So as I started going through that process with these kids, and we go from scoring 6 points to now we going 14 points to 20 points. Now we winning a game. We win 2 games in the tournament. To taking that same team the next year, we won the states and we won the USSSA nationals that second year with the same kids. So from that point on, like it just let me know that no matter where these kids were starting at their baseline, it was up to me to gauge to see how to make you the best version of you. And I would tell the kids like your best version might be a JV player in high school, or your best version might be, going to play at Carolina, but there's a lot of God given that's got to take place in that too. If you're a 5'8" center, I don't care how talented you are, like it's gonna stop at some point. But
Yep.
if you get blessed enough to be 7 foot, then you got a chance to go a lot further. Um, but it was just one of those things that kind of those early years really formed a selfless spirit in me to, as opposed to I'm losing this game or I won that game. My kids perform well, and my kids are going to school. My kids made varsity. My kids. That was always our goal. Was we didn't want kids to get cut in middle school. We don't. We want to make JV. We didn't skip and say we're going straight to Duke. It was
Yeah.
we were just happy they didn't get cut. So it was just kind of developing this game plan for these kids, and then developing myself as a coach. I sought out a lot of help after getting whooped that first game. Freddie Johnson at Greensboro Day School, who's if I'm correct, is the all-time winners coach in North Carolina. He started letting me come to his practices to kind of watch what he did. Um, Coach Keats was coaching at Hargrave Military Academy at the time. I would drive up there to see what they were doing in practice. So I just started seeking people out that would, provide any type of mentorship whatsoever to help me become a better coach. And over the years, you start gaining, developing a philosophy and a coaching style, and you can identify kids that you know that you can reach. I don't believe in not being yourself. So for me, I'm not a real I'm not a negative coach. Like I'm not gonna call you outside of your name and all of that. Like once I found my style and really speaking life into my kids and out, trying to match their work ethic, I tell them like you want to get in the gym, let's get in the gym. I'm there with you. So that whole step of the way, I wanted to make sure I could give 100% to my kids and kind of meeting them where they were at.
Yeah. Now, as I hear you say that, where my head goes is, and we'll get to the fact that you started coaching high school here in a minute, but when you're working with, we'll just say 12-year-olds to 18-year-olds, I think one of the hard things being the adult in the situation is sometimes you see the potential in a kid and you're like, dude, if you would just work harder, like you could have everything you've ever wanted. And sometimes the kid doesn't want it, right? Or they don't realize what it takes to get what they really want. Maybe they've always been 2 inches taller than everyone, so their work ethic lacks because their height has made up for it. And you see, but that's not going to last for forever, right? Like, hey, next year that changes, or, hey, in a year or two, people are going to catch up. So, how for you do you, to your point, match the energy, match the work ethic, but also instill in them, hey, I see so much more for you and help them get that buy-in or belief.
Yeah, that was one of the things I had to learn, obviously, because we had a competitor in the city that had more. tenure and success already that was documented, we weren't going to get those already made kids. So
Yeah.
what I started learning was the importance of relationships. I could tell you you're gonna be great and all that good stuff, but the kids looking at you like you don't even know me. Um, so what I really started doing was getting to know the kids, knowing the families, and I put a lot of effort into actually building a real relationship with my kids. And that's one, it makes it easier in those tough games. Because sometimes, especially at 12, if the other team has a 6 foot 12-year-old and your kid's a 5'3", I don't care how good of a coach or player you are, like the physics on it, just at that age, physicality can dominate a game.
Yep.
As you get older, you can run some adjustments and stuff. But at 12, 13, if I got 4, 6, 4 kids, there's not too much I can scheme to make
Yep.
sure that we win that ball game. But those relationships, when you call those timeouts, now when you're talking to the kids about effort and these things, like they know it's coming from a real place as opposed to that's just coach being coach or dad being dad or mom being mom. So once I started being able to spend time with my teams from 12 years old to 17, by the time we got to 14 or 15, we had a whole different mindset because now the kids knew what I expected out of them and I knew what they expected out of me. And once we got that to match, like I had a lot of success, like happened really quick. I wasn't anticipating, but I attribute a lot of that one to the mentorship I had
Yep.
from the vets that helped me out, and then just building those relationships with those kids for more than just one season. And that's birthday parties and water parks and all the stuff that's not basketball related. That stuff helped us perform better on the court.
I love it. Now, for you, you eventually start transitioning to the high school ranks. And while in the high school side of things, you also develop a relationship with Team Felton. So, talk a little bit about kind of how those two opportunities came to be for you.
Well, actually, before I got to Western Guilford High School, I was at Lincoln Middle School in
Okay.
Greensboro, North Carolina. I went and helped a buddy of mine. I was his assistant. Came into there, and a lot of the kids from that team that I told you we got whooped, they came into the school. It was a magnet, and we performed really well in year one. And after 1 year, the varsity coach at Western Guilford saw what we had done and asked if I'd be interested in being the JV coach at the high school. So I went and took the job there. The varsity coach was already coaching for the NC Gators program that I talked about earlier,
Yeah.
uh, and he had Harry Giles on that team already. He had Harry Giles, he had Jamie Newman who played quarterback at Wake Forest, Mike Buckland who played at Lipscomb University, Jalen Seegers who played at UNC Asheville. So those kids were already together. They ended up playing Jalik, who was Raymond's nephew. Raymond had just gotten drafted by Charlotte. So Jalik was playing AAU ball in Charlotte. And when they played each other, Raymond wanted to put Jalik with Harry. And that's how Team Felton started. So by going through the high school season, Coach Wade, he's now an athletic director at Northwest Guilford High School, asked if I would help out with the AAU program. And that's how Team Felton started. And that was like maybe '07, '08, somewhere in that ballpark. That's how we started. And then a year after that, that's when I became director at Team Felton.
Amazing. So now that you have a name like Felton, I mean, from being at North Carolina to being drafted and playing with the Bobcats, I mean, that carries some clout. How does that help with developing the program, recruiting, high level kids to the program?
Obviously, a lot of people wanted to come because one, Raymond was heart was big, so he covered the expenses for a lot of kids and families and stuff like that. But I always say things happen for a reason. My experiences with the Greensboro Panthers, which later became Team Phoenix, once you start understanding that if you can develop kids, you always have talent. I never changed the philosophy. So all the coaches that came along with me to Team Felton, we all were some type of skilled trainer, developers. So we didn't really go recruit top kids like that. We really just focused on kids in the area. A lot of my coaches coached at the high schools in the area. So, if they had 2 or 3 kids and I had 2 or 3 kids, we would put them on the team. And we was gonna outwork everybody that we played against. What Raymond definitely helped with though is making it affordable for those families until we got the sponsorship with Under Armour. But we were able to in year one. Well, yeah, towards the end of year one, we our first test was we went out to Vegas, played in the Adidas 64 tournament, and I think we finished top four
Amazing.
uh, in the country with that group. But you're talking about Harry Giles and Jalik, and we had some dudes on that team. And once we played there and we went back and we repeated, finished top four again. Under Armour gave us opportunity, and we were with Under Armour, I think, from 2010 to 2021.
Yeah,
Um,
11 years.
but Raymond being Raymond makes Under Armour happen. It makes Adidas happen. There's a lot of talented teams that probably are just as deserving or more deserving of the sponsorship. But having an NBA player, you know, tied to your program definitely speeds things up a little bit.
Absolutely. Now, a focus for you was getting each player a scholarship. And so, once again, we all know that there's a small amount of players that are going to, or a small percentage of players that are going to play in the NBA, a small percentage that go on to have an international career. But a lot of people can have an opportunity to get school at this time paid for via scholarship. So talk a little bit about the beginning of building relationships, because as you now know so well, half of it, maybe more, is how good the player is. The other half is having the ability to get opportunities for the players to be seen and, have a chance to be fit in. So talk a little bit about for you as a coach, kind of cultivating relationships with those universities. So that way, you can bring to them, one of your top players.
Yeah, so it's kind of a two-part question. I was able to start creating those relationships because I later got into real estate with the government. I was doing government contracts where I would go in and inspect properties that had some type of HUD funding, HUD loans.
Yeah.
So I had contracts in pretty much every state. So if I was in Indianapolis for 2 weeks, I would go to IUPUI. I'm going to Butler. I drive up to Purdue. I go to IU. I go to Vandy. Like I would just, and I was doing this pretty much every week. I was going to almost 100 schools a year
Wow.
to visit and practices and emailing coaches, hey, I'm in town. They didn't know who I was, but I just want to watch practice. And once I started doing that and being able to identify talent, I would say, man, you should take a look at this kid at this such high school. I saw him and they'd be like, how you know a kid in Ohio? I'm like, I went to a high school game last week.
Yeah.
And so it started building to that, to the point where coaches would call and say, Fred, have you seen anybody I need to look at lately? And once I realized coaches were reaching out to me, I knew there was other people that were further down the road that they were doing the same thing with. And I wanted to be able to provide that for my athletes. And I just felt like if Raymond was giving us money and Under Armour was providing us money and these opportunities, like I would be selling our kids short if we didn't shoot for a scholarship. I can't guarantee you're going to get one, but that should be our goal. And I want it to be something that's paid for, D1 and D2. D3, there's no athletic scholarships. Um, so D1 and D2 is the goal. And we created a hashtag no student loans. And that was always our goal. So if we went to an AAU tournament and say Oklahoma said we're coming to see this particular player, I would tell the kids on the team, like, the 8 o'clock game, player X is going to be like, we're going to run everything for this kid because Oklahoma's coming to watch him play. And
Yeah.
we're going to try to make sure he looks good. If he secures his scholarship, then it's your turn next game. And our kids really bought into that. And like I can say, like, our first graduating class was 2015, last one was 2021, and every kid went to school on scholarship. So my coaches did a tremendous job of anytime we went to a tournament and college coaches were there, we found out where they were staying at, and we go to hotels. We went out to eat sometimes 2 or 3 times in one night, like just doing dinners. Hey, come watch that game tomorrow at 10. This kid is would, and we would do all that work every single weekend just to make sure our kids were, seen. And the good thing was I had already seen these teams practice, so I would say, hey, this kid right here is just like number 10 on your team right now. Like if that kid is a senior, he would be a good kid to fill in with. So now the college coaches were coming to the game with a realistic expectation as opposed to, I'm going to watch this kid and I hope he's good. Now they could actually see the vision of him replacing number 10. So as I would plant those seeds, the offers started coming. And then obviously, I had a kid named Sasha Kalea Jones, who was kind of the testament of, Sasha could barely catch when we first got him and ended up being a McDonald's All-American, goes to Kentucky, plays professional basketball. But his story could easily be a Disney story. To go from eighth grade at 6'4" and then almost 7 feet tall by the time he's out of high school, super skilled, one of the best players in the country in that 2016 class. That's kind of what we built our whole program on. And like I said, God blessed me with some super talented kids and some tremendous parents that saw the vision that we had for these kids. And we didn't never back off the no student loans. I told the kids those percentages that people talk about a lot of times. I said those percentages were created before y'all had your opportunity to go to college, so they don't apply to you.
Yeah.
And I know the other 3% or whatever that was going D1 at the time. I know that directors and coaches aren't going out to these hotels to go get these coaches in. So that 3% doesn't factor this in for you guys. And I told them when we go play these games, we're going to show everybody why we work so hard. And so we would lose some games because of that early on in the season, because we were trying to, playing you at the point guard for 30 minutes might not be the best way for us to win, but
Yep.
it was going to get to a scholarship. So
Yep.
we would try to make sure all of our kids had scholarship offers by the second live period. And then by the time we got to June and July, we had to gain ground to try to win UA finals. So you would see us go on this tear where we go 9-1, 8-2, or something like that. But that's because at that point in time, everybody had their monkey off their back, and they knew they had a scholarship offer that they could commit to. So it was a lot of work, but it's definitely fun to be able to see these kids do these commitment posts, go watch them play college basketball, and I got two sons now that play. I was able to expose them to that early, so these guys, they saw them put the work in, achieve the dream. So my kids have no excuse not to dream big, when it comes to basketball.
I love it. Now, as you mentioned, it's such a relationship opportunity. And sometimes those relationships with a 12-year-old kid, fast forward 6 years, 10 years later, are not 12-year-old kids. They're McDonald's All-Americans. They're pro athletes, right? And so if I understand correctly, herein lies where Ascension Sports kind of gets birth. So talk a little bit about the idea behind that business and really what you're doing now, helping student athletes that way.
Yeah, like so during that time when Raymond was involved, there would be times he needed me to do little things for him, whether it's setting up basketball camp or Fred, I got this interview, or just prep stuff in general that outside of playing ball in the NBA. Like he had all that taken care of, but just the little stuff that you don't even think about as a fan that these guys have to deal with in their personal life. So a lot of that stuff I would take care of for him when needed. And so the kids, as they started getting to that same situation, they would say, Coach, well, can you do what you did for me? What you did for Raymond for me. And COVID hits. My real estate job that I was doing with the government contracts get shut down at that moment. And that's really when Ascension Sports started, because I was like, I got this time. These kids still need help. This stuff is still going on. And I didn't want, at this point, I started meeting agents and stuff like that. And for me, I always want my kids to be in the best situation to be able to have success. And
Yeah.
some of that stuff was so predatory. I didn't want my kids going into situation blindly, whether it's picking a school, picking an agent, even to the point where they live at. Don't invest as much money in this type of house because if you get traded, you can't sell it. So just sharing all that information with these kids, it just became a business. And then on the flip side, by this point in time, I've had all these kids go to and produce at high level schools. College coaches were calling all the time, like, Fred, do you think this kid's good enough to play here? So I started being able to contract that stuff out to the schools, and then also helping out my kids to pick their school. And then the transfer portal turned it into a whole different animal that I was not anticipating. But my company basically was to take athletes and allow them to just focus on their sport. I want you to be able to go to school, play ball, and then everything else is taken care of. And that's really the essence of my business. And I chose Ascension as a name because I wanted your life to go to a different level after we met. Like I want you to be like, man, I met Fred and I went from here to here. And whatever that was, and that sometimes it could end with that, or it might be another step that might be needed that I could pass that on to a very good agent or whatever the case may be. But you didn't hit that stumbling block.
Yep.
With athletics in general, now we're starting early with NIL, but for you to be able to make $100,000 in college is tremendous. Like that's a tremendous head start on
Absolutely.
life. So we just try to make sure we can maximize that for the kids and help them understand how to manage that money, make it work for you. The decisions you're making now can lead to further opportunities after college, even if you don't play. But I'm super honest with my kids. Like they'll tell you, I'll be like, you're not good enough to play at these places, or you as a pro overseas, you might make $2,500 a month. You might be $600 a month. You're smart enough and capable enough to become somebody else's agent, business manager, and you'll make 10 times that. So it's just kind of putting the stuff in perspective. And I got guys that are college coaches. I got guys that are agents. I got guys. So it's just more so being able to help my kids maximize. I'm going to school for free. I obtained my degree. And coach, I want to be an agent. Now I can help facilitate that. Coach, I want to get into college coaching. I can help facilitate that. So I can help my kids more than just dribbling the basketball or throwing a football or throwing a baseball. So that's really what my company became or is. And like I said, a lot of the kids I have, Ricky Council, those guys, like they were babies when we met, and now you 23, 24 years
Yeah.
old, which is cool because I'm getting the chance to work with people I already know, and have trusted relationships with on both sides. So it's been a real blessing to be able to be in this situation.
I love it. Now, two things on that front. One is they always say, you can tell the character of a person and how they treat someone who can do nothing for them, right? And I think, that says a lot about you of, hey, I meet this person at 12 years old. I just treated them as the best 12-year-old and player coach relationship I could. Well, then when they're 24 and making these big decisions, or they're, now going through these really big life choices, they think, man, maybe Fred's the guy to talk to about this. And so talk a little bit about, cultivating the relationships before they ever needed something, right? I think that's a really important aspect of what you've been able to build, and, really is what's put you on your trajectory.
Yeah, I can say like I think I've always had a giving heart, but I think it really kind of turned to another gear with that first group of kids I coached. Seeing those kids put that work in and grind like that, and some of them went to school, some of them didn't. Like that disappointment of the kids who didn't, like it just tore me up.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that kind of like for that kid, they felt like their life was over with.
Mhm.
And for me, even though I was young at the time, I wasn't even thinking about if they didn't make it.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
just like always preparing for this basketball game. So like life taught me that like everybody at some point there's gonna be your journey is gonna stop on that route, but it doesn't mean your journey is over.
Yeah.
And I just think with maturity, the more I got into my faith, and that definitely played a big part into that because I'm a big believer in every day outside of basketball. Like somebody could be praying for a sign or just a moment of clarity on something that they're dealing with, or just a moment of peace or a happiness or a laugh or and I really try to do that for a lot of people. So I always tell my kids, you can call me forever long, the Lord sees the fit to keep me on this planet. Like you can call me for everything but abortions and bail money. Like you can call me. Like just before you do something, call me.
Yeah.
I had a kid that played for us in high school. His name is Neil Spinks. He was a tremendous kid, like joyous soul, and uh, took his own life while he was in college, and it messed with me a lot because I felt like kids should whatever you had going on. Like I want you to have somebody to call before you make such a drastic decision. And just knowing what type of potential he had, and just, such a great person. Those type of things just let you know that basketball is cool, sports is cool, but like these kids are people dealing with situations, and you just have no clue what each one of these kids are dealing with at home, what the
Yep.
parents are dealing with. Like, you just don't think about that. So as I started to mature, you just start trying to figure out what makes that kid tick. Um, how can I help him just in life in general, just to not give up? Fight through that frustration, or fight through that injury, or I don't have these offers that these other kids have, which is a tremendous pressure now that you have social media, and you looking like, man, I averaged 30 points and that kid averaged 18, but he's got 30 offers, and I don't. It's a lot to process for these kids.
Yeah.
They feel like failures, even though they're successful in every form of in athletics and even in the classroom, and it's just not producing the fruits that they want. But I try to make sure that the kids feel like they have enough mentors around that they can feel comfortable letting their frustration out. Um,
Yeah.
and then that way, once we get back to the court, we make that your safe haven, like for this hour and a half, 2 hours. But that's also for me as a coach. If I'm talking to you and I know you're struggling with something, but then I go and cuss you out because you missed a pass or missed a shot, it's pushing that kid further down in a place that it's hard for some of those kids to get out of. So it's definitely a you know a juggling act, balancing act. But as you get into it, you can start seeing signs a lot earlier now because you have more experience with it.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I told my kids, like, even if you don't play college basketball, like if you gave everything you had, like you're successful, and I can help you become whatever it is that you want to be that's attached to the sport now. Like I'm in a situation now where I can help you stay around sports, stay around the game. You play basketball with NBA players that they're in your circle. So now let's work to make sure each of you can help pull the other one up. And we just created this network, and coaching buddy of mine, Andre Gray, during COVID, created this Zoom where all these college coaches, all these basketball people just get on, and we just sat on their board talking. It might be 100 people on there. And as we started going through it, people like, hey, do you got a GA? Hey, do you got somebody you would recommend for? And it just started turning into this thing. And so I just implemented that into my company. And like I said, now I'm able to assist kids become a multitude of things within the sports realm. And, they get to see kids they played against. They get to see, coaches that helped them out. But it just keeps them around it. And I told them they make, you know, I said Jenny Buss makes a lot of money, and she doesn't dribble a basketball. So
That's
like that's
right.
still you can still do a lot in this game without putting the ball in the hole. So like that's just one of those things that just with my company is just keeping the dream alive, even though the way you saw it playing out doesn't happen exactly that way, but you're still a part of it and you can still compete and
Yeah.
be successful in it. So like that's in essence of what my company is.
Love it. Now, not to name drop, but you've worked with some amazing athletes that people will be very familiar with. One we were talking about before we started to record was Hendon Hooker. I know Jace Richardson recently just got drafted. So talk a little bit about, some of the players that you're working with and that you've worked with, and just, how those relationships have blossomed.
Yeah, like I really don't advertise what I do. I do the same prayer every New Year's. I tell God to send me the kids He wants me to help.
I love that,
That's
man.
that's pretty much it. Like I don't. Jace Richardson, obviously his dad played with Raymond down in Charlotte, but we was actually introduced by my guy Rodney Vinny. Rodney is one of the, I want to say directors. I don't want to get it incorrect, but with Philly's Pride, which was another Under Armour program. And during our time on Under Armour, we just really hit it off. And I tried to help his kids. He tried to help my kids if, they were struggling with recruitment. And when Jace was maybe ninth or 10th grade, he was at Bishop Gorman, had an injury where they weren't sure if he was going to play basketball again. So a lot of his recruitment stopped. And Rodney connected me with Jason and Jackie, his parents, and we just started, putting a game plan together, and he goes to Michigan State, kills it, gets drafted by the Orlando Magic this year. Ricky Council, obviously, like he was playing with a different AAU program, and then came to us and went from no offers to Wichita State, kills at Wichita State, transfers, go to Arkansas. 76 is now in Brooklyn Nets. It's just been a lot of different kids that, it's you start seeing these kids and you're like, man, like I really had a a bird's eye view of what it took to get these kids there. And I hate to, in the moment, it's kind of hard to think of everybody, but just looking back on it, like I can look, there's a kid named DJ Hertz who's with Arizona Diamondbacks as a pitcher. DJ was with us like seventh grade. He was on the same team with Joey Baker and Greg Gant and all these guys, and the blonde haired kid. He played all three sports. And by the time he got to his senior year, like he's supposed to go to Carolina for baseball and ends up getting drafted by the Cubs and, finally makes the main roster for the Arizona Diamondbacks. But it's not a quick, I never had an overnight where we knew it would be, no LeBron James or where we knew like 12th grade, like everything has been a 5, 6, 7 year haul. Like it's been a grind to get them to where they're at now. But I think my experience plus being able to deliver whoever their circle is kind of help them understand what this process is going to look like. It eases the anxiety. It doesn't take it away, but it helps them from searching or overreacting to the wrong things. And I think doing that allows stuff to play out the way it should be.
Yeah.
And I use Ricky a lot for kids because Ricky was one of the best high school players I've ever coached. And for whatever reason, like his recruitment just didn't reflect that. Went to Wichita State. Greg Marshall gets fired like right before he gets there. Yeah. Plays for an interim coach. Ends up going to the NCAA tournament. Can't remember. I think it was freshman player of the year in the conference. I can't remember exactly. Has another year with sixth man of the year in the conference. Goes to Arkansas, was supposed to play behind Anthony Black and Nick Smith and Jordan Walsh and all these guys. And a lot of those guys got hurt. He ended up getting thrown on the scene in the Maui Classic and tore it up. Goes undrafted, goes to G League, kills it, earns an NBA call up. And like just those stories are just continuing to push through. That part is worth more than anything. And like for that Ricky Council, when like my sons were probably 8 and 6, something like that, or 10 and 8, they was at the draft party and saw the frustration on his face, his disappointment when he went undrafted. Fast forward to him signing his NBA contract. So my kids were able to see in real time how he processed that. And, not only I'm talking to my sons like this, but they see me talking to, Ricky. Like I'm telling Ricky at the time, like you didn't hear your name called, but you got your whole family here celebrating you, starting your pro career. You're going to be an NBA player when the night ends. Like you got to reshape your mind. They could have called your name at 52.
Yep.
You could be making a standard G League deal. You got a 2-way contract.
Yep.
And you got to pick where you went to, play at. So again, it's just kind of being able to deliver that message to them to still be thankful for you're still going to be an NBA player. It didn't happen how you wanted it to, but you're still going to be an NBA player. And by the end of the night, like he's smiling and, truly thankful because you go from unknown to right on the scene. So just for my kids to be able to see that, because I want them to understand, like as a human, you're going to have emotions, you're going to have feelings, and it's okay to display those. But the older you get, the less time you have to just dwell on that. Like we have to figure out how to reroute or still get to the desired destination. And sometimes it just takes one person to keep the hope alive. Like I wish I could take all the credit, but I would like to speak it. But Ricky's brother has been tremendous in helping God. His mom has been awesome. Like he's with Young Money Sports, and Audie and Boog have been great with him, like keeping him on track. So like he just got released like 2 weeks ago. Like it's always like a wrinkle to the story beginning up in Brooklyn. So there's always going to be continuous trials there, but you just have a good circle around you to make sure that you got as many of the answers as possible, and just to be able to let them know, like, you still going to play basketball when September gets here. We just got to make sure we get you in the right spot.
Yep. I love it. Well, Fredrick, I want to say thank you for sharing your journey and your story. And I believe that your prayer will continue to get answered, and that is that God will just keep putting these young athletes in your life, and you'll keep honoring Him and honoring the relationship. So thanks so much, and can't wait to do this again in 3 to 5 years and see how much bigger the business has grown.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me.